Chapter 3. Letters in the Sand. Walking a little way back from the water's edge, toward the groves of trees, Dorothy came to a flat stretch of white sand that seemed to have queer signs marked upon its surface, just as one would write upon with a stick. "What does it say?" asked the yellow hen, who trotted alongside her in a rather dignified fashion. Oh, she asked the yellow hen. Sorry. What does it say?" she asked the yellow hen, who trotted alongside her in a rather dignified fashion. "How should I know?" returned the hen. "I cannot read." "Oh, can't you?" "Well, certainly not. I have never been to school, you know." "Well, I have," admitted Dorothy, "but the letters are big and far apart, and it's hard to spell out the words." But she looked at each letter carefully and finally discovered that these words were written in the sand. "Beware the Wheelers." "Well, that's rather strange," declared the hen, when Dorothy read aloud the words. "What do you suppose the Wheelers are?" "Folks that wheel, I guess. They must have wheelbarrows or baby cabs or handcarts," said Dorothy. "Perhaps the automobiles," suggested the yellow hen. "There's no need to beware of baby cabs and wheelbarrows. But automobiles are dangerous things, and several of my friends have been run over by them." "It can't be automobiles," replied the girl, "for this is a new wild community, without even trolley cars or telephones. The people here haven't been discovered yet, I'm sure. That is, if there are any people, so I don't believe there can be any automobiles, Belinda." "Well, perhaps not," admitted the yellow hen. "Where are you going now?" "Over to those trees to see if I can find some fruit or nuts," answered Dorothy. She trampled across the sand, skirting her foot in one of those little rocky hills that stood near, and soon reached the edge of the forest. At first, she was greatly disappointed, because the nearer trees were all punita, or cottonwood, or eucalyptus, and they bore no fruits or nuts at all. But, by and by, when she was almost in despair, the little girl came upon 2 trees that promised to furnish her with plenty of food. One was quite full of square paper boxes, which grew in clusters on the limbs. And upon the biggest and ripest boxes the word lunch could be read in neat raised letters. The tree seemed to bear all year round, for there were tiny lunchbox blossoms on some of the branches, and on others were tiny little lunch boxes that were yet quite green, and evidently not fit until they had grown bigger. The leaves of the tree were all paper napkins, and presented a very pleasing appearance to the hungry little girl. This just seems awfully convenient. But the tree next to the lunchbox tree was even more wonderful, for it bore quantities of tin pail dinners, which were so full and heavy that the stout branches bent underneath their weight. Some were small and dark brown in color. Those larger were of a dull tin color, but the really ripe ones were pails of bright tin that shone and glistened beautifully in the rays of sunshine that touched them. Dorothy was delighted, and even the yellow hen acknowledged that she was surprised. Same. The little girl stood up on a tiptoe and picked one of the nicest and biggest lunch boxes. And then she sat upon the ground and eagerly opened it. Inside she found nicely wrapped in white papers a ham sandwich, a piece of sponge cake, a pickle, a slice of new cheese, and an apple. You gotta love new cheese. Each thing had a separate stem, so it had to be picked off the side of the box. But Dorothy had found them all to be delicious, and she ate every bit of luncheon in the box before she had finished. Lunch isn't exactly breakfast. Dorothy. Chapter 3, and I'm already done with Dorothy, because you just found lots and lots of free food in a deserted beach after being shipwrecked. And she's like, "Well, I wanted eggs and bacon." Come on. But when one is hungry, one can eat even supper in the morning and not complain. What were you doing? That is exactly what complaining is. Well, I hope your lunchbox was perfectly ripe, observed the yellow hen in an anxious tone. So much sickness is caused by eating green things. Oh, I'm sure it was ripe, declared Dorothy. All except the pickle, and the pickle just has to be green. Everything tasted perfectly splendid, and I'd rather have it than a church picnic. Whew. That is heresy. And now I think I'll pick a dinner pail to have when I get hungry again, and then we'll start to explore the country and see where we are. Haven't you any idea what country this is? Well, not at all. But listen, I'm sure it's a fairy country, or things as lunchboxes and dinner pails wouldn't be growing on trees. Being a hen, you wouldn't be able to talk in any civilized country like Kansas, where no fairies live at all. That's a step up. Kansas is a country now. Well, perhaps we are in the land of Oz, said the hen thoughtfully. No, that can't be, answered the little girl, because I've come to the land of Oz, and it's surrounded by a horrid desert that no one can cross. Then how did you get away from there? Oh, I had a pair of silver shoes that carried me through the air, but I lost them. Ha, indeed, remarked the yellow hen. Indeed, yep. You just used the shoes. Although the hen did remark in a tone of unbelief. Anyhow, returned the girl, there is no seashore near the land of Oz, so this must be some other fairy country. While she was speaking, she selected a bright and pretty dinner pail that seemed to have a stout handle and picked it from the branch. Then, accompanied by the yellow hen, she walked out of the shadow of the trees towards the seashore. They were partway across the sands when Belinda suddenly cried in a voice of terror. What is that? Dorothy turned around quickly and saw coming out of a path that led between the trees a very strange person that her eyes had She saw a strange person. It was the form of a man, except that it walked, or rather rolled upon all fours, and its legs were the same length as its arms, giving the appearance of 4 legs of a beast. Yet it was no beast, Dorothy had discovered, for the person was clothed in the most gorgeously in embroidered garments of many colors, probably ginghams, and wore a straw hat perched jauntily upon the side of its head. But it differed from human beings in this respect, that instead of hands and feet, there grew at the end of its arms round wheels, and by means of these wheels it rolled very swiftly over level ground. Afterward, Dorothy found these odd wheels were the same hard substance that our fingernails and toenails are composed of. Okay. And she also learned that the creatures of this strange race were born in this queer fashion. But when our little girl first caught sight of the first individual of this race that was destined to cause her a lot of trouble, she had an idea that this brilliantly clothed personage was on roller skates, which were attached to his hands as well as his feet. "Run!" screamed the yellow hen, fluttering away in great fright. "It's a wheeler!" "A wheeler?" exclaimed Dorothy. "What can that be?" Dorothy, think a couple of minutes ago. "Don't you remember the warning in the sand? Beware the wheelers, I tell you, run!" So Dorothy ran, and the wheeler gave a sharp, wild cry and came after her in full chase. Looking over her shoulder, she ran. The girls now saw a great procession of wheelers emerging from the forest, dozens and dozens of them, all clad in splendid, tight-fitting garments, all rolling swiftly toward her and uttering wild, strange cries. "They're sure to catch us," panted the girl, who was still carrying the heavy dinner pail she had packed. "Quick, climb up this hill, quick," said the hen. Dorothy found she was very near to the heap of loose and jagged rocks they had passed on the way to the forest. The yellow hen was even now fluttering among the rocks, and Dorothy followed as best she could, half climbing, half tumbling up the rough and rugged steep. Tumbling up, that's a skill. And she was none too soon, for the foremost wheeler reached the hill a moment after her. But while the girl scrambled up the rocks, the creature stopped short with howls of rage and disappointment. Dorothy now heard the yellow hen laughing in her cackling henny way. I do like that, henny way.
Don't hurry, my dear. They can't follow us among these rocks, so we're safe enough.
Dorothy stopped at once and sat down upon a broad boulder, for she was out of breath. The rest of the wheelers had now reached the foot of the hill, but it was evident that their wheels could not roll upon the ragged and jagged rocks, and therefore they were helpless to follow Dorothy and the hen to where they had taken refuge. But they circled all around the little hill, so the child and Belinda were fast prisoners and could not come down without being captured. Then the creatures shook their front wheels at Dorothy in a threatening manner. It seemed like they were able to speak as well as make their dreadful outcries, for several of them shouted, "We'll get you in no time, never fear. When we do get you, we'll tear you into little bits." "Why are you so cruel to me?" asked Dorothy. "I'm a stranger in your country, and I have done you no harm." "No harm!" cried the one who seemed to be their leader. "Did you not pick our lunch boxes and dinner pails? Have you not stolen the dinner pail that is still in your hand?" "Oh, I only picked one of each," she answered. "I was hungry, and I didn't know the trees were yours." Legally, that's not a good defense for stealing. "I only took 2. "Now that's no excuse," retorted the leader, who was clothed in the most gorgeous suit. "It is the law here that whoever picks a dinner pail without our permission must die immediately." Okay, now in that case, the punishment does not fit the crime.
"Don't you believe him," said Bellina. "I'm sure the trees do not belong to those awful creatures. They are fit for mischief, and it's my opinion they would try to kill us just the same if you hadn't plucked a dinner pail."
"I think so, too," agreed Dorothy. "But what shall we do?"
"Stay where we are,"
advised the yellow hen.
"We are safe from the wheelers until we starve to death anyhow. And before that comes, a good many things might happen."
It might. But then again, it might not.